Imagine this. A man stands at the edge of a storm. The sky above him is fractured with lightning. The sea below churns in rebellion, and yet his gaze does not waver. Around him, the wind screams of betrayal, misunderstanding, and words that were never meant to be spoken. Still he remains, calm, deliberate, unmoved, not because he is cold, but because he understands that the tempest is not outside of him, it's within. The true storm has always been internal, the clash between desire and discipline, between ego and essence, between love and self-control. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And in the modern world of fractured connections, emotional volatility, and digital longing, few truths are more relevant. The Stoic Compass does not point toward comfort, it points toward clarity. It directs you away from the illusions of control over others and brings you face to face with the only domain you truly govern, your own response. Today, relationships have become emotional battlegrounds disguised as love stories. Most people chase validation as though it were oxygen, mistaking attention for affection and silence for rejection. But the Stoic, guided by his inner compass, learns that love, like virtue, must be chosen from strength, not from need. The man or woman who lives by this compass does not beg to be understood. They embody understanding. They do not seek constant reassurance. They radiate assurance. They do not manipulate emotions. They master them. You have seen it. Two people arguing not for resolution, but for recognition. Each waiting for the other to yield, to validate, to submit. Yet in this theater of wounded egos, no one wins. The Stoic, however, steps outside the performance. He watches the chaos unfold, but he does not lose himself in it. For he knows that when emotion becomes a weapon, silence becomes a shield. This silence is not passive. It is the silence of a man who refuses to react from the wound. It is the quiet of a woman who will not dance to the rhythm of another's insecurity. In this silence, there is dignity, not withdrawal. There is observation, not apathy. It is in this sacred pause that the Stoic perceives the truth, that most relationship storms are born not from betrayal, but from ungoverned expectations. Modern psychology echoes what the ancients already knew. Attachment is often an echo of our childhood patterns. The longing to be seen, the fear of being abandoned, the need to control what we cannot. Jung called it projection, the unconscious act of casting our hidden fears and desires onto others. We fall in love not with a person, but with a mirror, one that reflects both our light and our shadow. When the reflection no longer flatters us, we call it heartbreak. But heartbreak, to the Stoic, is not punishment. It is revelation. It reveals where our inner governance ends and our illusions begin. So when Marcus speaks of controlling only your mind, he does not mean withdrawal from love. He means mastery within it. To love without attachment, to care without possession, to remain kind without being naive. This is the art of the Stoic heart. It is the rare strength of one who can stand in the storm and say, "You cannot shake what is rooted in reason." But make no mistake, Stoicism is not indifference. It is not emotional paralysis. It is presence without panic. It is passion tempered by principle. It is the man who listens without needing to be right, and the woman who walks away, not to punish, but to preserve peace. In their stillness, there is power. The kind of power that cannot be seduced, controlled, or broken. Perhaps you have been there, trying to hold together something that keeps unraveling. explaining yourself to someone who only listens to win. You think that if you speak clearer, they will understand. If you love harder, they will change. But the Stoic Compass whispers differently. Let go of control, and you will regain command. When you stop chasing harmony outside, you begin to cultivate it within. In this stillness, every storm loses its grip. The words that once cut deeply now glide over the surface of your calm. The silence that once suffocated now becomes sanctuary. And in that moment, you understand. The purpose of love was never to complete you. It was to reveal where you were still broken, so you could rise whole. The Stoic does not seek to avoid pain. He seeks to learn from it. Every disappointment becomes instruction. Every heartbreak, initiation. And in this process, he becomes unshakable. Not because he has hardened, but because he has harmonized. There comes a point when a person realizes that not every storm deserves to be fought, and not every silence is a threat. The Stoic learns that control is not found in resistance, but in response, and sometimes in restraint. Marcus Aurelius understood this well. The world would always test a man, but his peace was never a gift. It was a discipline. In relationships, this truth cuts deeply. For most people, connection becomes a battlefield of unspoken needs, validation disguised as love, fear disguised as care. One partner seeks reassurance, the other seeks freedom, and between them grows a quiet tension. The feeling of being simultaneously needed and misunderstood. This is where the Stoic Compass becomes essential. It does not guide you to escape love, but to love without losing the self. Aurelius wrote of aligning the soul with nature, meaning that every emotion, every disappointment, every rejection has a rhythm and order. Modern psychology calls this emotional regulation, but the ancients saw it as virtue in action, temperance, wisdom, courage, justice. When you begin to live by these principles, you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" In the midst of conflict, most people abandon clarity. They argue not to be heard, but to survive. Every word becomes a weapon. Every silence becomes proof of neglect. The Stoic, however, steps outside of this reactive cycle. He listens with detachment, not to calculate his next defense, but to perceive the truth beyond emotion. He watches how his partner's fear manifests in anger, withdrawal, sarcasm, avoidance, and instead of mirroring it, he anchors himself in stillness. That stillness is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength, the ability to remain conscious when others are consumed by chaos. It is the discipline to respond rather than react. The Stoic understands that emotion is not the enemy. Unconsciousness is. To feel is human, but to be ruled by feeling is to live enslaved to impulse. Have you noticed how most people try to fix the relationship by fixing the other person? They forget that projection distorts everything. Jung taught that what we criticize most in others is often what we refuse to face in ourselves. The impatient woman who calls her partner cold may secretly fear her own lack of self-control. The man who accuses his lover of being manipulative may fear confronting his own emotional dependency. Every conflict, when seen through the Stoic lens, becomes a mirror. And most people shatter that mirror before they ever look deeply into it. The Stoic, however, looks and keeps looking. He studies his anger, his jealousy, his craving for recognition. He does not suppress them. He transforms them into understanding. Each emotion becomes a teacher, each disappointment, a doorway. This is not self-denial. It is self-mastery. When Aurelius spoke of the obstacle being the way, he was describing this exact process. Love will test you. It will expose the hidden fractures in your character: impatience, pride, attachment, insecurity. But the Stoic does not run from exposure. He endures it, learns from it, and purifies himself through it. Where others see pain, he sees refinement. And yet this path can feel lonely. To stand calm while others rage against you, to hold silence when others demand chaos, it can feel isolating. But solitude is not the enemy of the Stoic heart. It is its sanctuary. In solitude, a man remembers his principles. In solitude, a woman reclaims her worth. This is where the compass points, inward, always inward, until the storm no longer frightens, because the sailor has become the sea. The Stoic compass, then, is not a philosophy of detachment from life, but a deep intimacy with it. It allows you to love without clinging, to forgive without losing boundaries, to endure rejection without collapsing into self-pity. It replaces emotional dependence with spiritual depth. And in modern terms, this is psychological maturity, the integration of shadow and self, the union of reason and feeling. The Stoic does not suppress his emotions. He integrates them into the architecture of his virtue. Anger becomes assertiveness. Fear becomes foresight. Desire becomes devotion. Each emotion is transmuted by awareness, like base metal into gold. You begin to realize that peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the mastery of your reaction to it. And once that realization crystallizes, no argument, no rejection, no betrayal can unseat your inner equilibrium. The compass no longer trembles. It points unwaveringly toward the true north of integrity, where love is no longer a transaction, but a reflection of strength. When two people love without self-awareness, they build castles on clouds, beautiful, fleeting, and destined to fall. Yet when one learns to love through the Stoic compass, the foundation shifts from illusion to integrity. There is no longer desperation in the grasp, no fear in the letting go. For love rooted in virtue cannot be lost. It simply transforms. Aurelius taught that a man's worth is measured by what he gives his attention to. In relationships, this becomes revelation. When your mind obsesses over what she said, what he didn't do, what they might be thinking, your compass spins wildly, pulled by external gravity. But the Stoic redirects that attention inward. He asks, what within me is reacting? What shadow seeks control? This is the essence of both Stoicism and psychology, the unmasking of the self beneath the story. When a lover pulls away, the untrained mind trembles. The ego panics, whispering, "You are not enough." But the Stoic sees that fear for what it is, a phantom of attachment. He does not chase ghosts. Instead, he stands still, allowing the emotion to rise, crest, and fall. He breathes through the wave, knowing that whatever remains afterward is truth. Love that survives detachment is love purified. This does not mean the Stoic stops caring. On the contrary, he cares more deeply, but wisely. He understands that compassion, without boundaries, becomes self-erasure. To be endlessly available, endlessly forgiving, endlessly patient with dysfunction is not virtue. It is self-abandonment, disguised as love. And so, the Stoic loves without losing himself, gives without depletion, forgives without forgetting the lesson. Psychology calls this secure attachment, a state where one can be intimate yet independent, compassionate yet composed. The Stoic recognized it long before science gave it language. His security comes not from another's affection, but from alignment with reason. His sense of worth does not fluctuate with the tides of approval. He is steady, not because life is easy, but because his principles are unshakable. And this steadiness, paradoxically, makes love deeper. For the Stoic partner does not cling, demand, or control. He listens, he observes, he holds space for the other to grow or to leave. If the relationship must end, he mourns, but he does not collapse. He knows that endings are not punishments, but passages, ways the universe clears the path for truer connections. There is something profoundly magnetic about such calm. The man who is not desperate becomes desirable. The woman who no longer chases validation becomes radiant. Their peace becomes presence. Their silence, strength. In a world addicted to reaction, stillness becomes rebellion. To live this way is not easy. It requires dying to old versions of the self. The pleaser, the controller, the rescuer, the one who mistakes chaos for passion. The Stoic dies many small deaths before he is truly alive. But from these ashes rises a new kind of love, clean, grounded, serene. It does not demand, it simply flows. Modern relationships often glorify intensity over intimacy. We are told that the highest love must be dramatic, impulsive, all-consuming. But the Stoic knows better. A fire that burns too hot consumes itself. True love is not a blaze. It is an eternal ember, warm, constant, quietly luminous. It asks not for possession, but for presence. And so, when storms come, as they always do, the Stoic does not curse the sky. He aligns his compass, steadies his breath, and remembers. The obstacle is the way. Every argument becomes an opportunity to practice patience. Every misunderstanding becomes a test of empathy. Every heartbreak becomes a mirror reflecting how much mastery remains undone. What is mastery then? If not this, to feel deeply without drowning, to care without clinging, to remain open without being wounded by every gust of wind. The Stoic does not escape emotion. He refines it until it becomes wisdom. In this refinement, he learns the greatest truth of all, that peace and love are not separate paths. They are the same road, walked with different steps. One cannot love without inner stillness, nor find stillness without learning how to love rightly. Eventually, every storm reveals its purpose. What once felt like chaos begins to take shape, like waves carving the shore into meaning. The Stoic learns that relationships, too, are sculptors. They chisel away the unexamined parts of us, revealing the architecture beneath. Each heartbreak, each misunderstanding, each long night spent wrestling with the weight of silence, all of it refines the soul into something stronger, quieter, more deliberate. Marcus Aurelius often spoke of living in harmony with reason and nature, and nowhere is this harmony tested more than in love. For love is nature's most beautiful contradiction, the union of vulnerability and strength, of surrender and sovereignty. The untrained heart treats this contradiction as conflict. The Stoic embraces it as balance. He does not fear intimacy, he fears dependence. He does not avoid emotion, he purifies it. In the realm of emotion, there is a law as constant as gravity. What you chase runs, and what you embody attracts. This is why the Stoic does not pursue validation. He becomes the embodiment of calm, purpose, and presence. And like the steady flame that draws the moth, his stillness calls forth sincerity in others. This is no trick of charm. It is magnetism born of mastery. To live this way requires continual shadow work. Jung taught that the shadow is not the darkness we reject, but the truth we refuse to face. In love, that truth is often simple, yet terrifying. We seek others to heal what we will not confront alone. The Stoic confronts it. He sits with his loneliness until it loses its power. He faces rejection until it no longer defines his worth. He allows discomfort to season his wisdom. Each time he resists the pull of impulsive reaction, he strengthens the muscle of peace. The modern world mistakes emotional restraint for suppression. But Stoicism is not repression, it is redirection. It is the art of channeling energy inward, refining it from chaos into clarity. The Stoic man does not yell to prove his power, he breathes to preserve it. The Stoic woman does not chase to feel loved, she pauses to remember she already is. Their calm is not emptiness, it is depth. In psychological terms, they have transcended the cycle of reactivity. Instead of being hijacked by emotion, they use emotion as information. Anger reveals boundaries, fear points to attachment, sadness signals release. Every feeling is a messenger, and when met with awareness, even pain becomes a guide. There is profound beauty in such composure. It does not numb the world, it reveals it in sharper focus. The Stoic sees love not as a transaction, but as an opportunity to practice virtue. Patience becomes devotion, honesty becomes intimacy, forgiveness becomes liberation. When his partner lashes out, he does not retaliate. He observes, like a philosopher watching the tides. He understands that most cruelty in love is unconscious, the reflex of pain defending itself. So he chooses compassion, not as weakness, but as discipline. And yet, this discipline never means submission to harm. The Stoic knows when to walk away. Detachment, in its truest form, is not escape, it is alignment. When a relationship begins to pull him away from his integrity, he does not linger in self-betrayal. He lets go, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Fate leads the willing, wrote Seneca, and drags the unwilling. The Stoic walks willingly into the next chapter. It is here, in this quiet exit, that his strength shines most. For leaving without resentment is harder than staying out of fear. To wish peace upon the one who hurt you is the highest act of sovereignty. It is the victory of spirit over ego. It is to say, you cannot break what I have already made whole. And so, as the waves recede and the wind grows calm, the Stoic stands alone, yet not lonely. His solitude is not emptiness, but fullness. The fullness of one who has learned to belong first to himself. In that belonging, every connection becomes richer, freer, more honest. He can love without demand, give without depletion, and walk away without regret. Because he no longer seeks to win at love, he seeks to become through it. There comes a moment when the Stoic no longer seeks calm. He is calm, not as performance, not as posture, but as nature itself returning to its center. The storms that once terrified him now seem almost sacred, because each one carried a hidden lesson about mastery, detachment, and grace. He understands now that relationships were never meant to complete him. They were meant to reveal him. The ancient philosophers called this oikeiosis, the process of coming into harmony with one's true self. Modern psychology calls it individuation. Both speak of the same awakening, when a man or woman no longer needs others to reflect their worth, because that worth has become an unshakable internal truth. This is the quiet transformation. You begin by reacting, arguing, defending, and you end by observing, understanding, releasing. What used to provoke you now teaches you. What once felt like rejection now feels like redirection. Every emotional wound becomes a doorway back to equilibrium. This is not the death of love. It is love purified of fear. Aurelius said, The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The Stoic heart learns this through pain. The betrayal that once shattered you becomes the forge of character. The silence that once haunted you becomes the sound of self-respect. You stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and begin to whisper, "Thank you for showing me where I still needed to grow." For the Stoic, love is not about conquest. It is communion between two souls who meet as equals, not halves. There is no seduction in dominance, no power in possession, only alignment. Two journeys running parallel, neither eclipsing the other. And if paths must diverge, they part in dignity. The compass does not blame the map for ending. It simply turns toward the next horizon. Modern minds often mistake detachment for coldness, but true detachment is warmth without obsession. It is to hold someone with open hands, to love them freely enough that their freedom never threatens your peace. This is the paradox of Stoic affection. It is both tender and untethered. It does not demand, "Stay." It whispers, "Go if you must. My peace remains." The power of such love is irresistible. It does not shout, it emanates. It does not chase, it attracts. When a man embodies this kind of calm, the world feels safer around him. When a woman carries this stillness, her presence commands without words. They have become living reflections of the Stoic ideal, self-possessed, self-led, self-contained. But this transformation is not sudden. It is forged in nights of doubt, in conversations that break you open, in moments where silence becomes your only companion. You will be tempted to return to old patterns, to explain, to chase, to react. But each time you resist, each time you choose awareness over impulse, you realign with your compass. You remember that virtue, not validation, is your destination. And when you finally stand at the edge of peace, you realize the greatest freedom is emotional sovereignty. No longer do you live enslaved to how others see you. No longer do you measure your worth by how deeply you are loved, but by how deeply you love, without losing yourself. This is where the journey ends and begins again. In the stillness after the storm, in the quiet dignity of those who have learned to love as Aurelius taught to live, with reason as guide, with virtue as anchor, with compassion as law. Because the woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses. The man who knows his peace doesn't beg, he builds. And the soul that knows its path does not wander, it simply walks.